In 1965, Singapore became an independent nation under circumstances few considered hopeful. The island had no natural resources, limited land, almost no industrial base, and very little food production. Unemployment was high, housing was overcrowded, and even essential drinking water had to be imported. At the time, many experts believed the young city-state would struggle to survive as a country, let alone prosper. Yet within a single generation, Singapore would become one of Asia's richest cities and one of the world's most efficient economies. This is the story of how that transformation happened. The separation from Malaysia. Singapore's independence did not begin as a long-planned nation-building project. In 1963, Singapore joined the newly formed Federation of Malaysia, along with Malaya, Sabah, and Sarawak. The union was expected to provide economic strength and political stability. However, disagreements between Singapore's leadership and Malaysia's federal government soon emerged over economic policy, political power sharing, and ethnic relations. Tensions escalated into social unrest, culminating in racial riots that shook the Federation. By August 1965, the political situation had become unmanageable. In an unprecedented decision, Malaysia expelled Singapore from the Federation. Within a single day, Singapore found itself forcibly independent, without an internal market, without resource security, and with little economic protection. At the declaration of separation, Singapore's Prime Minister, Lee Kuan Yew, addressed the nation on television. Visibly emotional, he spoke of the painful break and the enormous uncertainty facing the new country. Lee had led Singapore since 1959 as its first prime minister under self-government, and after independence, he continued as the founding Prime Minister of the Republic of Singapore, tasked with guiding the fragile new nation through its most vulnerable years. The separation was both a political shock and an economic crisis. Singapore lost direct access to Malaysia's resource base and agricultural support, and now stood alone in a competitive global economy. Yet this moment of crisis also forced Singapore to adopt a bold survival strategy. Opening to the world. Under the leadership of Lee Kuan Yew and his cabinet, Singapore moved quickly to reshape its economic future. Recognizing that reliance on regional protection was impossible, the country committed to full engagement with global markets. The government built a business environment centered on legal security, efficiency, and openness to foreign investment. English became the primary working language of business and administration. Transparent laws and strict enforcement of anti-corruption measures established institutional credibility at an early stage. Multinational companies responded. Manufacturing facilities rapidly expanded in the electronics, petroleum refining, ship repair, and chemical processing. These industries created large-scale employment opportunities and built technical expertise across the workforce. Exports increased dramatically, linking Singapore into global production chains. Within 2 decades, manufacturing had become the backbone of national income growth and provided the financial capital necessary for broader development. The power of geography. Singapore's strategic location amplified the success of its open trade strategy. Situated along the main shipping corridors connecting East Asia, South Asia, the Middle East, and Europe, Singapore occupied one of the most valuable crossroads of global commerce. The government invested heavily to develop world-class port infrastructure. Container terminals were modernized, loading systems automated, and customs procedures streamlined to minimize delays. Ships could dock, transfer cargo, and depart faster than in nearly any other location worldwide. Trade volumes surged, and industries supporting shipping, including maritime logistics, insurance, port engineering, and freight finance, expanded around the port. Singapore became not simply a stopping point for ships, but an integrated maritime ecosystem. Building human capital. Singapore understood that infrastructure alone could not sustain long-term economic strength. Human capital became the next strategic focus. Education was redesigned to emphasize mathematics, science, and engineering, while vocational institutions prepared technicians for industrial growth. Universities adjusted curricula to meet global standards in research and technological development. Teachers were held to rigorous professional standards, and student performance was continuously assessed. Over time, Singaporean students became top performers in international testing. By the 1990s, Singapore had built one of Asia's most reliable and highly skilled workforces, enabling the economy to move into more advanced manufacturing, biomedical industries, financial services, and technology management. Governance and trust. Singapore's transformation was also shaped by its approach to governance. Corruption was treated as a national enemy. Public officials faced strict accountability, including strong legal penalties for misconduct. At the same time, bureaucratic procedures were simplified, ensuring that compliance remained efficient without sacrificing legal oversight. This produced a unique environment in Asia, high discipline combined with low administrative friction. Domestic and international investors saw Singapore as one of the most stable legal environments in the region. Contracts were respected, policies were predictable, and political stability allowed businesses to operate with confidence. Trust became a central, though invisible, pillar of economic success. Entering the financial age. As wages rose and manufacturing matured, Singapore once again adapted its development strategy under continued long-term planning initiated during Lee Kuan Yew's leadership. The economy pivoted toward financial and service industries. International banks were encouraged to establish Asian headquarters. Wealth management firms, commodity traders, shipping finance companies, and insurers expanded into the city, forming a comprehensive financial ecosystem. Singapore positioned itself as a neutral conduit for capital flows, connecting China, Southeast Asia, India, Europe, and North America. By the early 2000s, the city ranked among the world's major financial centers alongside New York, London, and Hong Kong. Trillions of dollars in financial assets are now managed from Singapore annually. Why businesses still choose Singapore? Singapore remains globally competitive well into the modern era. Corporate tax levels remain relatively low. Capital gains remain untaxed. Legal protections for contracts and intellectual property are extremely strong. Regulatory procedures are fully digitalized, allowing businesses to set up and operate rapidly. Infrastructure continues to rank among the world's best, from seaports and airports to transportation networks and telecommunication systems. Together with political stability and high levels of safety, these factors maintain Singapore's position as one of the world's most attractive business environments. The results today. Today, Singapore's GDP per capita exceeds 80,000 United States dollars, placing the city among the wealthiest urban economies on Earth. Living standards rank at the top of Asia. Crime rates are among the lowest globally. Singapore also holds one of the highest concentrations of millionaires worldwide. Within less than 2 generations, Singapore evolved from a struggling port city into an industrial exporter, then a maritime hub, and finally, a global financial powerhouse. Conclusion. The core strategy. Singapore's extraordinary rise was not the product of natural wealth or fortunate discoveries. It was built through deliberate strategy, disciplined governance, openness to global opportunity, and sustained investment in its people, shaped initially under the leadership of its founding Prime Minister, Lee Kuan Yew. The story of Singapore proves a fundamental truth of development. Prosperity is not inherited, it is engineered. On a small island that many believed would fail, Singapore built one of the richest cities in world history.